All right, this is Charles Jeffries, Seattle Central College, speaking for Rainier Radio today, and the topic's going to be on affirmative action. In other words, affirmative action in retrospect. Oh, can I how do I get the screen up? Oh, there you go. Let me get the X out. Okay, yeah. So the title of this presentation. Are we good? Do you have the sound?
Sound should be on.
Okay.
Going. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Okay, back to the topic. This is going to be affirmative action in retrospect, and we're going to look at why white students can't compete with Asians when it comes to test scores. Okay, really, before I start out, I want to shout out Brother Bill Conwell. He was a big brother to me when I was in Stanford. He had already been in the military, officer in the military, had his master's degree, and was returned to school to get his PhD. And me, I was fresh out of college and didn't know much about anything. So he was really a good advisor to me and a really good friend over the years. And I stayed in touch with him. Anyway, if you hear this, brother, if you watch this, Brother Bill, this is for you. But affirmative action, you look in terms of the theory behind it. Okay, it was established sometime during the Johnson administration. The whole idea is it's kind of a way to kind of make up for slavery and the 300 years of racial oppression by letting some of these folks in the college. Okay, and as Henry Louis Gates once said, that affirmative action was kind of our reparations for slavery. Okay, and then Donald President Johnson, not only did he come up with the idea, he also incorporated it into the government and in the legislature. Okay, let's try to fix some way to correct or fix these things that are happening in school. Okay, now also it came right at the same time of the shift in the job market. William Julius Wilson talked about the 1980s. You had a shift in the job market from a assembly line oriented factory economy to a service, white collar. So in terms of a lot of jobs opened up, white collar jobs opened up, where a lot of blue collar semi-skilled labor basically shut down. Whenever you hear Trumpers saying we want to back great again, they're really referring to the 1950s. In other words, the 1950s economically were some of the best. 1950, about 1980 or so, was economically the best America was economically, because most people own their own homes, most people have jobs they can retire out of. Okay, and most people had savings accounts. Okay, but then you had a shift in the job market. That's what they call the Rust Belt. Through all these Michigan, Ohio, where I grew up, Western Pennsylvania, the steel mills shut down, and which caused a spike in unemployment. There's a video came out called Roger and Me. Okay. How does this relate to affirmative action? Well, basically, as a result of, we need to open these doors for people in the job market and also in these college institutions. Okay. In 1970, that's when everything was kind of put on the books and everybody was kind of trying to get their everything up. But then what happened is your critics came out, particularly Baki and some other folks, saying that that's not fair to white folks. In other words, racism was long ago and it's past. And so now these quotas or whatever they set aside for these people of color, particularly Black people, was unfair. Okay, in other words, this assumption is, well, racism is over, we should move on, and so forth. And that's where Baki came up. Baki was a Jewish white individual who felt that he was turned down. He sued the state University of California system because he was turned down because he was white. Interesting, he felt he was turned down because he was white, not because he was Jewish. Okay, and then after the Baki decision came Proposition 209. Okay, where University of California, Ward Connolly kind of led the charge on that one, where basically there are too many of these people. And what was really interesting about that one was when affirmative action was at its best at that time, there's only 4% of African Americans at UC Berkeley. 4%, 4 to every 100 students at University of California. Berkeley, and that's just too many. And one thing that got me in the state of Washington, University of Washington, there are 45,000 students at the University of Washington. At the time affirmative action legislation came up, there are 350 black students at the college. So 350 blacks, that's just too many black people. 4 out of 100 is too many black students. So here are the figures here for UC Berkeley before and after affirmative action. Okay, first you have UC Berkeley, 1995, 37%. Okay, then now post 209, it went to 43%. Then we looked at UC San Diego. You see also what the figures there. Okay, but think about that. In other words, but what they don't really understand is white enrollment went down as a result of Prop 209. In other words, in 1996, 36% of the students at University of California, Berkeley are white. Post 209, okay, now it's 22% of the students at UC Berkeley are white. Now think about that in terms of what happened. Yeah, white black people out as a people. In other words, 4% before, and then it was 0% afterwards. Okay, but it also hurt them. Then in November 2014, Edward Blum, another Jewish American, Jewish individual, sued Harvard. Okay, saying that pretty essentially there are too many black people there. Okay, and that is unfair, and basically that he won. And the thing is, I was reading an article a while back, and they're talking about how this guy was a genius. Blum was a genius because he used Rosa Parks' strategy, the 14th Amendment, to wrangle it around to win that case. In reality, a monkey could have won that case. Anybody could have won that case because the judges were already in place to make that decision. I mean, you have 3 judges on the Supreme Court who have no respect for black people whatsoever. You have 3 other judges who don't really care about us one way or the other. And 2 of those judges are predictable. Anything that comes up that's going to help people of color in general, you can count on voting against it. So he wasn't a genius. Anybody could have won that case. Okay, that's why I tell my students a lot of times you need to get out and vote, not because of personalities, but because of the judges and legislatures that takes place. Amherst College. Okay, you saw the figures there. In terms of looking at that and going right, just looking at some other figures around other schools, other institutions. So pre-Harvard ruling, you had 42% identified as white, 22% as Asian, 11% as Hispanic, and 10% as black. Post affirmative action. Now check these figures. Any way you can make that fig bigger? This little here. Oh, perfect. Y'all beautiful. Yeah. Okay. And this is post affirmative action. Okay. Let's look at Harvard. Let's look at both under. So what you have here is Asian population went down from 22% to 14%. Blacks went down from 10% to 6%, and Hispanics went down from 11 to 9%. But look at this: white enrollment also went down 47 to 33%. Okay, so worried about black people getting something, you lost a lot of teaching yourself. And the question becomes, who are those other 20% people there who didn't describe race? And I'm pretty sure 9 chances out there are not going to be European or white Americans. Okay, they're mostly these people from other countries. Internationals, probably you saw that increase with internationals. Okay, can you make this one bigger too? Thank you. Okay, But think about that in terms of those figures. Neither Asians nor whites in the Harvard case really had anything to brag about. Okay, in other words, white enrollment went down, or white admissions went down from 47 to 33%. Okay, and Asians went down from 22 to 14%. Probably the most dramatic change was MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. You had an Asian population increase from 40 to 47%. Blacks went down from 15% to 5%. That's a big drop. 15% of admissions the previous year was black. Now it's down to 5%. Latinos went down from, can I make it bigger? Latinos went down also. Okay. Now this is really interesting. University of North Carolina, this is where the main cases were. Could you make that one bigger too? Thank you for a second. Thank you. Okay. Look at this. In other words, pre-affirmative action, you had 54% white, 13% Asian, 8.3% African Americans, and so forth. But look at post-affirmative action. Good. Okay, didn't change much. Whites went up from 52 to 50, or 54 to 50, just went slightly. Asians went to 12%. Blacks didn't really go down much. Okay, blacks didn't really go down. Went from 9% to 8%. Okay, so it didn't have the effect that a lot of people might have hoped. I mean, I just read an article, CNN the other day. Well, blacks' situation is hopeless now because enrollment's down, and thanks to affirmative action, all these changes, and so forth. But they haven't seen the figures. Let's go to another one. Princeton didn't change. Okay, look at Princeton. They still have the same percentage of African Americans as they did before affirmative action. Okay, and here are the figures for Princeton. You said 8. It actually went down slightly from 9% African Americans to 8%. Okay, but thinking the Asian population went down at Princeton though. It went from 25%. In other words, before affirmative action, Asian population 25% of Princeton's student body was Asian. Now it's down to 20%. So Asian enrollment went down. Okay, let's look at some other institutions. University of Virginia. University, no significant difference. Went from 7.9% African Americans to 7%. Emory University, it went down. Went from 12.6% to 11%. Once again, not really that significant of a change. And this brings us to the Dunning-Kruger effect. Dunning-Kruger effect states that intelligent people tend to underestimate how smart they are, and unintelligent people tend to overestimate how smart they are. In other words, stupid people tend to think they're smarter than they are, and intelligent people tend to underestimate how smart they really are. My mom used to have a phrase, I don't know where she got it from, but she used to always talk about it, is he who knows nothing and knows that he knows nothing is wise, where he who knows nothing and does not know that he knows nothing is a fool. So let's look at that in terms of Dunning-Kruger effect. And we'll start with Francis Galton. Francis Galton was Darwin's cousin, and he's famous. Everybody loves him because he used statistics. He was the first person to use statistics to calculate human differences, individual differences. Like he invented the first mental abilities test. That was the crazy thing about it. He was considered to be the most intelligent man in the world because he got a perfect score on a test that he invented. What's really important about Galton when it comes to dealing with this situation is that one of his beliefs was that the most intelligent black person in the world is dumber than the dumbest white person in the world. In other words, the dumbest white person in the world is more intelligent than the smartest black person in the world. Think about that. And what we're talking about, could you throw those memes up for me now? Oh, you got them over here. Okay, what you have here is the assumption is that it looks like this. In other words, one part of the red curve would be all white people, or in terms of intelligence, compared to this over here, that all black people are this way. On the other hand, in reality, they're overlapping curves. Oh, perfect. They're overlapping curves. In other words, you see here, let's look at the mean, because that's what we're looking at, the statistical mean. And if you look at the mean, there's a lot of white folks who are dumber than the average black person, and there are a lot of black people who are more intelligent than the average white person. Okay, so it overlaps. And that's one of the things I have to say that I learned that's one of the beauties, or one of the things I learned from, and a lot of other people learned from going to integrated schools, is that white Americans all white Americans aren't geniuses. A lot of, they have a lot of dumb white people also. G. Stanley Hall, first president of the American Psychological Association. Okay, he also bought into Galton's myth. I'm gonna call it Galton's myth, the myth that every white person in the world is more intelligent than every black person in the world. And Hall said he's gonna get international. He's gonna refer to all people of color as being less intelligent than the average white person, white people in general. In other words, it says G. Stanley Hall, first president of the American Psychological Association, blacks, Indians, and Chinese are members of adolescent races. And that's the dominant factor in educational capacity. In other words, he's saying these people don't have the capacity to read and be civilized people or have profound thought. Lewis Terman, he's the one who translated the IQ test from French to English. You're talking about the Stanford-Binet test. That's who we're referring to, who started it. And he believed in his writings, blacks that blacks can't be capable citizens because they're all stupid. But then he was surprised to find out, after administering this test, that blacks from the North outscored whites from the South. Wait a minute now. All these people are supposed to be dumber than all these other people, and then this test proves that that's not true. Okay, then this where it goes back to the instance and reality you have in terms of the interacting curves. Okay, but Gton Smith, that's what the basis of all your anti-affirmative action comes from. In other words, the whole idea that the dumbest white person in the world is more intelligent than the smartest black person in the world. And we know that's true. We know that's not true. Okay, and how do you look at it? You look at the test score, we're talking about contributions to society. Okay, it's a myth. It's not a fact, it's a myth, but everybody buys into it, at least the folks, anti-affirmative, Elon Musk and other folks, Trumpers buy into it. These people are genetically inferior, and these people who are getting jobs are unqualified. And that's the real myth, that the people who are getting these affirmative action jobs are less qualified than the people who got turned down. In other words, these unqualified people of color got these jobs over highly qualified whites, but that is based on Galton's myth. Okay, West Virginia, I want to talk about unintelligent white people. I mean, in other words, my point is that blacks or people of color don't have monopoly on stupidity. West Virginia, I want to look at West Virginia as an example of where you have a massive number of white people who are not very intelligent, who are less intelligent than the majority of African Americans of people of color. According to Emily Badger of the New York Times, West Virginia is the dumbest state in America. Janet Yellen, she talked about how most of the Biden's plans and even Obamacare, to a certain extent, help people in red states more than they help people in blue states. In other words, these people from West Virginia and Alabama and Mississippi, who they receive more government aid than they put out, where the majority of blue states, they give more federal aid than they receive. Okay, we're talking about dirt poor people. Okay, majority of them are functionally illiterate. Okay, and they continue to vote for policies that keep them poor. And it's really interesting. Free college, community college. Okay, and Manchin and some of those other folks voted against it. We don't want free community college. Well, if you have a situation where you don't have any jobs, education doesn't seem like the best thing. You look at the percentage of people in West Virginia who are on Obamacare, okay, who are on welfare, who are on Medicare. Okay, the worst state in the world, in America, who could benefit from all these policies that Obama put forward and Biden put forward, and they voted against it. And also, according to Patrick Fry, okay, West Virginia is the biggest welfare state in addition to being the dumbest state in America. Okay, so 26% of his annual income comes from welfare, where the national average is 16%. Okay, poverty rate, West Virginia. In 2022, poverty was 17.9%, the third highest in the country. Okay, think about 308,000 people in West Virginia live in poverty out of somewhere around 1.7 million. Okay, child poverty rate, okay, once again, is extremely high in West Virginia, yet they continue to vote for politicians who keep them poor. Okay, think about this. This is going right down, looking at all the figures here. And then look at this, 29% of all children in West Virginia, they're not getting enough to eat behind, or and also behind on their payments, rent payments. Think about that. And these are people, these programs that Biden and those folks put on the table could help these states out and help these people improve their situations. Yet they vote for politicians who vote against these programs. Okay, once again, labor force. And that's something really fascinated me about the last Trump's election. Okay, was that he said he's going to help the coal industry because that would help West Virginia. And that was the myth to a certain extent that Joe Manchin talked about. But in reality, there are more people who work at Walmart in West Virginia than work in the coal mines. 10,000 people work in the West Virginia's coal mines, where 12,000 people work in Walmart. Okay, so think about this in terms of what we're really talking about. The whole people thinking more than they know. And in reality, look at this, and this is what really is I find encouraging. I know everybody else saw this is terrible, this horrible affirmative action is kind of making life worse for these people. Actually, I find it encouraging because this right here says UC Berkeley. This is before the Baki decision. We're talking about 1970 when affirmative action was at its best. 4% of the students at UC Berkeley are African American. Well, today, after affirmative action, 6% of the students are Harvard African American. After affirmative action, 14% of Yale, okay, is African American. MIT had dropped, but it's still higher than what UC Berkeley was, okay, before affirmative action, okay, or when affirmative action went its prime. And then University of North Carolina it's still 8%. So once again, it's higher than UC Berkeley was when affirmative action was its best. I guess UC Berkeley today is somewhere around 3.5%. So it's inching back up to 4%. Okay, so let's look at that in terms of what affirmative action was and what they portrayed it to be and where it is now. Okay, as one of my students, Julie Hayter, once said, affirmative action was a window and not a door. In other words, the window's open now and it's closed. Okay, it's open some other place. But looking at these figures, I'm not really discouraged. But also, let's go back to Dunning-Kruger. Unintelligent people tend to overestimate their skills and abilities. And this is where the subtitle I said, white Americans can't compete with Asians if test scores are the main criteria for admissions. Okay, let's look at those figures. In other words, if an Asian kid, a middle-class Asian kid came home and he had the same SAT score as an average white kid, his parents think something's wrong with him. Okay, or he'd take him to some tutoring or get that kid some help. Okay, and then so that's where the test scores kind of come into it. Okay, you got schools, entire graduating classes in Hong Kong and Singapore who are scoring in the 80th percentile on the SAT scores and all these scores, SAT, ACT scores, 80th percentile. Okay, the entire graduating class. Okay, and they're only, for the most part, maybe 4,000 spots in some of these schools, or for instance, Stanford, maybe under 2,000 spots. So you have all these. So right there, so test scores, they can't compete, and they don't even see it coming. Okay, but that's probably what happened with Yale. Yale probably didn't. I'm not sure exactly what they did. I know they talk about their personal statement. They looked at that and a lot of other issues. But I think that they did one of the things they took out were the test scores, and you see where it pretty much stayed the same. Also, you think about in terms of where we go now. Where do we go now? Okay, well, to me, like I said, this 8% is, that's acceptable. You see, right now we can move that up, but long term, our kids need to get the schools and the quality education that they need to be there. In other words, one kid goes to school and then comes home and gets tutoring. Okay, and also on the weekends they take classes to teach them how to pass that test. Another kid takes that test cold. Okay, who's going to do better? I mean, it's kind of like, and that's where I go back to. Let me use a soccer analogy when it comes to looking, understanding why whites can't compete with Asians. Let's say you do a group of 5-year-olds, teach them how to play soccer and have them play every day till they're teenagers, and then put those kids on a field with a group of kids who never seen a soccer ball. Who's going to do better? And that's my point about tests. If you're using test scores, not just Asians, but international students going to eat Americans up. I mean, you got places like Kenya and Nigeria and Ethiopia, as well as Japan and China, where the child grows up in a culture where they see tests as a way to maintain or have a certain standard of life. And so their goal is, I'm going to do the best I could possibly be on that test. Okay. Whereas Americans, we go to school, we don't really see the test the same way. We just want to pass the test. So you have one group of people who I want to get the highest score I could possibly get on this test. Another group of people are raised from the time they're kids, okay, to be the best they can possibly be. So those kids are going to go to school and practice up on that test. And they practice on this. So by the time that they are to take that test in the 10th or 11th grade, they've already practiced it many times. Okay, where other kids never get a chance to take it, they take it cold, they don't get to practice. Okay, so all these factors kind of come in. And also, I would say is for African American, Latino kids who are still filing for college, yes, be sure to put that you're African American or Latino in your personal statement. Okay, because these colleges want diversity. So, all right, this is how much time we got? 1 minute. All right. So I covered everything I wanted to cover this time. So I want you to thank you for this time, and we'll continue looking at some other issues related to Aristotle, plagiarism, and deconstructing the cultures the next week. All right. So I'll see you next week, same time, same place, and we're going to continue and elaborate what we started today.